Yeah. Ken's coming in right now. Am I starting off?
I think you are. I was finishing up Underwood at my house.
That's all right.
Over here, so.
You guys had Underwood all afternoon? I got you guys worn out.
It's a double treat, Brett. Double treat.
What's that?
It's a double treat for us today.
Would be a little bit of
For me, Coach.
I don't know what Brad had to say. But excited. We got practice number 11 coming at us. It'll be our last full padded practice before we, Saturday we'll kind of put a little bit of a work into what Monday night is going to be. So really just kind of this is the equivalent for us. I explained it to our guys, right? So during the fall, we play a game on Saturday. We come to work on Sunday, put that game to rest no matter what happens. Monday, we'll take a day off, and Tuesday will be really, in theory, probably our hardest work day on the field. A lot of early down recognition, a lot of early game planning, a lot of physicality. So Tuesday will be that hardest work day. Well, the way the calendar works out, playing on Monday night, you count back days. Tomorrow will be like a Tuesday of game week for us. So really explaining to those guys the physicality of tomorrow's practice, kind of get them settled into that mind frame and get them ready to roll for the rest of the week. So other than that, I'll open it up. I understand you had QBs yesterday. Two guys really that have embodied since we got here what we've talked about. They both have done a really nice job. Both of them had playing time last year as well as a couple of other guys, but they've stood out to me just the way they prepared, kept advancing, kept getting better every day. They're getting reps that are very valuable, both good reps that they learn from and some reps that aren't what we want, and they got to learn from them as well. So I thought those guys handled themselves very well yesterday and put their best foot forward. So with that, I'll open up the questions.
Coach, I'm going to go first, if that's okay. You've got the potential here on Monday. You've got a captive audience across the Big Ten, across the country. What's the potential for you guys? What can you do on Monday, not just locally, but like nationally? What could be the impact of this scrimmage to the spring game for you guys, on TV and everything?
Is Bob asking a question? I couldn't hear him.
Could you not hear me?
Yeah, I could. I was just kidding you. I heard you ask Colin that before the question.
It's funny with me. I like it.
All good. Monday, this was kind of one of the things I went with right away when I got here. It was, being out of college football the last 3 years, I knew how these spring games worked. There was a lot of, times where people were trying to contrast between is this a spring game? Is it a scrimmage? What are we trying to get out of it? And I think for us in particular, a new program, new staff, basically a new regime, even though we got a lot of really, significant players returning because of the super senior, I wanted to have a way to have us have our own unique niche, our own little time slot, so I basically threw out to our media people to reach out to ESPN, the Big Ten Network, and say, what can we come up with that will give us our own little spot? And that's when Monday Night Football idea came at us. I definitely agreed to do it, and that's what we're doing it for, Bob. More than anything, it's just I've been able to tell recruits from the West Coast to the East Coast and everywhere in between, from teams that are guys that are a half hour away from us, that we have a limited number of tickets. I think somewhere around 8,000 tickets that went very quickly in the same day. There's a great interest, but I think the fact that, I could tell a kid that's in 5 states removed from us that we could be on live Big Ten Network at 7:00 on Monday night Central Time is a big deal, and we're going to try to use it that way. But on the same account, we only get 15 of these practices, so I have to balance the ability to put on a show that we can, show the nation. But on top of that, we're still trying to get a great work day for our players. So we'll balance those two things out and hopefully have a lot of good success.
Coach, the one-time transfer rule looks like it's going to come into play. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it was just a formality. I think most coaches had planned for this. It had happened with other sports, so usually if it happens in one sport, it's going to happen in all sports. So it's something that we had been kind of planning on, not only with the players we had recruited, but also the ones that we had targeted. I think anything that benefits a student athlete is a step in the right direction. My only concern, right, is, literally a player can get done with his last practice at a university within this conference, a Big Ten West rival or a Big Ten conference opponent, have an exit meeting with his coach, talk about coming back in the fall, and then 2 weeks later decide to have a one-time transfer, and you could be facing in your opening game of the 2021 season, or the 5th game, the 6th game. So I think interconference transfers is very concerning for the health of our game. But that's probably second to the overall wealth and well-being of our student athletes. I'm always in favor of benefiting our student athletes in those type of situations. But I think as we move forward, there's some definite trigger points that we got to work through as coaches.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Hey, Brett, good to see you again. As far as Monday's news about fans being allowed in, I know you just talked about all these fans being able to see on BTN, but I imagine just getting the fans there in person probably brings a whole new element to it. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm excited for our players. I think to get their family and friends. I've opened it up. I opened up the one scrimmage to obviously immediate family, but they haven't been able to have in their friends. I've heard from several people in my life, both family and friends back in the day from when I was growing up, and people that have followed me in my career that have got tickets. So I think that'll be exciting. And I told our staff today, in the NFL last year, and for instance, at the Giants Stadium where I was at, they didn't allow fans whatsoever. There wasn't anybody in the stands except for the players and the officials. There wasn't anything else. There weren't any bands or any of that stuff. So the thing that jumped out to me is when we go to some of the stadiums that had limited seating. I believe we went to the Cowboys with Philly. There was a couple teams along the way that had limited seating. And even though it wasn't a big number, it might've been only, 10,000, 15,000. It seemed like you're playing in front of 100,000 just to hear the fans. So I'm excited for our kids. Whatever the number is going to be on Monday night, it'll be fun to have them back in the crowds. And I think about it all the time. The first time any of us played the game of football, and I went over this with our guys the other night, it wasn't because there was 100,000. It wasn't because you were on major network on national TV. It's because you love the game. And that's what we've been able to do here this spring. And Monday night will be a continuation of that.
And I know you've told us before that you plan for this to be best against best, but just from don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but basically what can we expect as far as the formatting for this spring game?
Yeah, I'll give you a little insight. So I just met with our staff, and just by pure numbers of where we're at and the continuity factor, we're actually going to we're going to play good old American football and do it the way we always do it, but there'll be a few wrinkles, right? So it'll be kind of our ones against the world to be our guys that we factor into being the premier guys at this point. Not saying anything's going to change. Now we'll rotate that group around a little bit, but for the most part, I want my one offensive line or the 5 guys that we project right now to be in the 5 guys, possibly a swing guy or 2 getting the majority of their reps together. I think in this world that we live, we can't do enough of guys playing together that'll be together, whether it be offense, defense, or special teams, it'll be that way. So if our one offense out there, the orange unit is out there, and we stall out on the -42 and have to have a punt, we're going to have the one punt team come out and punt. If we've got the blue offense out there, our next group out there, whatever, if they, get the ball in field goal range, then our blue field goal unit will hop out there as well. So there'll be basically the orange and the blue. The orange will be against the rest of the world. We'll rotate people through. The first half will be a normal clock operation for 15 minutes each quarter. Play the kick scenario as it plays out. If the blue offense scores, everything counts double. If the blue defense scores, everything counts double. So if it's a touchdown, that's worth 6. Double is 12. The PAT instead of worth 1 is worth 2. A field goal instead of worth 3 is worth 6. And then we'll also have some field goal competition in between the middle of in between the first and second quarter, and again between the third and fourth quarter, where we'll do rapid fire field goals to try and bank up some field goal experience in front of the crowd, as well as a little competition on the field that you'll see. So we'll make it as engaging as we can. Try to have some great interaction. I know the BTN is going to send. They won't have a booth up in the tower, but they will have a Big Ten crew calling it. We'll work with them just like we will for a normal game, giving them insight of what we're doing, and they'll have a sideline representative as well that will work with our players on the sideline, give a little interaction of what's going on as well.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Hey, Brett, good to see you. I want to go a little bit big picture with you. You talked about that first practice, how much it I guess what it was like to be back out on the field for a spring ball, back in the college game. And as we get near the spring game and the back end of this, what has it meant to you to be back in this position as the voice at the front of the room, running your college program again?
Joey, I appreciate the question. It's kind of been since that first defining moment when you go out there and you realize, hey, we're back at this. It's kind of been a whirlwind. I've been so consumed with planning each practice, working with our staff, making corrections, recruiting, moved my family here 2 weeks ago. Like, there's been so many things I really haven't taken a step back and realized that I'll probably come that week afterwards when we start to have, I'll meet with every kid in our program, every player in our program will meet with his position coach, his coordinator. And then the week after that, we'll sit down as a staff and kind of take a self-analysis of where we're at. And that's probably when I'll reflect back on the actual meat and potatoes of the head coach. But, a simple thing like last Saturday, we had some bad weather, projected to roll in. And I got up and I went to bed that night and checked the weather, and it was calling for heavy rain. And like right when we were about ready to go out on the field, I got up in the morning and that had been pushed back about an hour and a half. That was like 4 a.m. So I kind of started looking at the weather over the next hour or two. It has made a decision to flip everything, called in all of our support staff and changed the whole schedule around. And we got in our entire workday without any issue. It started raining right at the end. And it made you, for a head coach, like you did, okay, hey, that was a good choice, right? Whatever it was. Now I made some bad choices too. Just not telling you about them, right? So like, I think the part that you have to do all the time as a coach is evaluate where you're at. And I tell you one thing I've really, probably noticed more than anything at 51 years of age, I've got a room full of really good coaches and support staff and different people that I've hired for all the right reasons. Let them do their job, right? And give advice, but also listen to other ideas. I've learned, that I think the best way to say it is the more ideas and discussion you have, the better results you'll have. And that's definitely something I've taken into effect.
I think some of the coaches have talked about the way that you explain the game, to them, to the players, get into the X's and O's a little bit more. Is that one of the biggest areas you've changed since you were last in this seat? Yeah,
Joe, you know what it probably is, and it's something I knew on the first round, but I go back to, I'd learned from a very good head coach, Aiden Fry. Coach Fry, when he gave me a job, I was 23 years old. I was a linebacker coach. I was working with linebackers that I had actually helped recruit and play with. And I remember specifically, he told me 2 things. He said, never ignore something and never coach something you don't. And I used to always think about that in terms of like, I knew something was there, but I maybe didn't say it because I didn't want to, I want to give those coaches a chance to correct it. Or maybe I actually said something and I didn't know all the answers, but I thought I needed to say it. So I would say now at 51, especially after spending my time with the NFL with Bill and Joe in New York, is I know what I know, and if I can explain it and make things clear to our players and coaches, the better we're all going to be. Because I think that the better we're prepared before the ball is snapped, the faster you can play and the more efficiently you can play. So that's definitely been a big change for me.
Thanks, Bret. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, kind of going off that same footing here of Joey's question, you spoke a lot about your football one-on-one classes that you're doing. When guys switch positions, like we've talked about in the past, what, if anything, changes in those meetings for those players as they're maybe in a new position room?
Yeah, first of all, I think just the basic idea, Alec, of changing a position is like, I've stayed steady with this one all the way from, one of my first position changes was Travis Beckham, who was a outside linebacker who played for me, who I switched to tight end and ended up being a draft pick for the Giants as a tight end, to all the ones that I had along the way. Some, have been NFL decisions that have been very, very good. I always want that decision to ultimately be their own. So, I know a couple of guys asked, Isaiah a couple of questions yesterday about if I feel like there's a time when a player should think about a position change, I'll present it in a question. I'll present it in a way that if this is a decision you want to make, we can make it together. I think good players eventually know when they are in a position they can be successful. And sometimes it takes a suggestion. Sometimes they haven't even thought of it, right? So I took Marquesi last week. I give him a scholarship, and then I bring him in, a half hour later and say, hey, why don't you try tight? This is why I think you should try tight end. He had the best catch of the day in Tuesday's practice. Phenomenal catch. And now he's begins to understand what I saw, and our coaches, like coach who didn't want to give him up. I like basically said, listen, as good as he could be for you, he might be even better for us at tight end, and we got to give him that opportunity. So that's what I always start with. It has to be their idea. But I always, when I talk my football 101, to answer your point, probably a little longer than you wanted, like I always talk all three phases of it. So we talk backed up football on Tuesday. I talk backed up football offensively, backed up football from a defense point of view, backed up football from a punt coming out, and backed up football from a pooch team trying to kick it in. If you explain it that way, all of our players touch those teams. Even though you're a starting tight end, you still might be on punt, and you might be on phases of the kicking game that it's affected by. So I think it's important to learn it from all three phases.
And then this is kind of on a different note, and I hope it's not a stupid question, but are the quarterbacks going to be hit on Monday night, or are you going to keep them upright as much as you can?
By me or by our teammates?
Well, hopefully not by you, by their teammates.
Yeah. No, the quarterbacks I think will be in white. We'll run out of colors. We got the blue and the orange, and then we got the white guys will be the quarterbacks. The guys in white jerseys will be the quarterbacks. And then I think the part that we want our quarterbacks to understand, right? They're going to have a quick whistle around them, right? So if they're scrambling or putting themselves in a position to get outside the pocket, there's going to be a quick whistle on them. Yeah, we won't go live on the quarterbacks. But there have been some drills this spring where we have taken swipes at the ball, try to get them as close to being uncomfortable as we possibly can.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, good afternoon. A more specific positional question. You have a lot of safeties on the roster that have a lot of playing experience. What have you seen out of that group, and what do you need out of that group?
Yeah. I think just on paper coming into it, we thought that might be a position that, with the experience that we had, be an important group, and they've lived up to it. I think that whole group, between Quan, Sydney, all those guys back there, Fraser Hudson, who has had a lot of experience, in the SEC at Georgia coming in, and there's a whole host of guys that have jumped up. I think at times our defensive package will be driven by that, as far as how we put them out there against bigger people. In our division, you look at the Big Ten West, we have Iowa and Wisconsin who play with a lot of bigger people on the field at certain times, and the ability to get big on defense is going to be important. And you play teams like Nebraska, Northwestern, Purdue, a little bit of Minnesota, who get a little bit smaller in their personnel groupings, and you have the need for more speed out there. So it really depends on who we're playing and what the game plan is, but it's a versatile group that's been fun to work with, and Coach Walters, as impressive as he is for me as a defensive coordinator, a guy that kind of can help lead our program. He's been even more impressive to me as a positional coach, especially that secondary in the safety position. So very, very excited about that group.
And when Prather came in here, you spoke highly about kind of that championship mindset he can bring to your program. How does that manifest itself, or how does he bring that? Like, what's that look like?
Prather, the best thing I can always say about players, coaches, is consistency. And I think Fraser Hudson shows up. He's the same guy every day. You can count on 24 doing what you ask him to do. And if he does make a mistake, it's going to be one that he only makes once. He repeats, or he learns from his mistakes as well as any player I've been around. He's got a quiet, subtle demeanor to him. Obviously, mom and dad did a great job of raising him. He just truly embodies everything that he's been raised to be, and then has had a great effect on our program because he's now brought that into our locker room. And he found a lot of like minds. It's kind of interesting when you watch kids, take a break or sit in the locker room or around in team functions, or who they gravitate towards. It's been interesting for me because you can see him already begin to have an effect on the team, even though we haven't played a game yet.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Coach, you talk a lot about downs when you're talking about practices. We worked first and second down today. We worked third down today. You seem to set a lot of practice things you do around that. Can you maybe talk about where that comes from? Did you learn that from other coaches you work for? Is that something you've put in all the time at all your stops? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Robert. I would say, as a whole, not only the outside world, but I would think even in the world of football, a lot of teams concentrate on first down and on third down, right? I always call second down the most ignored down in football because a lot of people just worry about those two. They want to start the series right, and they want continue to make that series happen. But we put a huge amount of emphasis on second down just because it has a huge effect on what can happen on third down, right? If you do a really good job on second down offensively, you don't even see third down. So that's part of the driving force, but also make our kids aware. Like, I don't want a paralysis through analysis. I'm not going to give them information that makes them think too much before the snap. I'm going to try to give them information that makes them aware before the snap on situational awareness. But, you know, we talk as coaches, there's 12 types of first down, right? So I don't have to go into all those with you guys, but as coaches, we need to know that and understand what the situation is that we're in. And players really just need to know, is it first down? Is it a P and 10? Is it, you know, a first and 10 after a turnover? Is it a first and 10 in the red area? Is it first and 10 end of half, end of game? The basic things that got to come to light, because it allows them to understand what they should expect offensively and defensively in the game itself.
And my second question was about recruiting. And typically tomorrow would be assistants going out on the road. You know, obviously it's different now and can't happen. That's got to be quite a hamstring for a first-year coach to not have that, you know, that spring of assistants out there getting into high schools.
You know, Robert, it's a great point. And I appreciate what you're saying, but we've tried to take the exact opposite, right? This has to be to our advantage, right? So just like I told our players a week ago Thursday when we went out on the field and it was raining, coming down sideways, a little bit cold, a lot of people probably went inside, but for us, we have to take every minute that is adversity and turn it into a positive, right? And anybody that views something as a disadvantage has to be an advantage to us. So for us in recruiting, as soon as I get out of this call tonight, as soon as I get off with you guys, we go into a 2-hour lockdown with our coaches and try to reach out to as many players as we can that are, you know, what we feel are hot prospects, guys that we feel really connected to. We can FaceTime them. We can get on the phone, hand the phone to each other, have a lot of interactive communication, you know, and really do a lot of good in a short amount of time. Even though we can't go out on the road, our coaches can reach out to high school coaches and have a collective Zoom with their staff and go over maybe a tackling circuit or do something. You'd never be able to do that if you went out on the road. You'd just be going in and out of every school. Tell me about Johnny, tell me about Jimmy, tell me about Stevie, and then you're out the door. Right now you can spend some time with them and develop a football relationship with them, which is what we all are, right? So it's an inconvenience and it's a bump in the road, but for us here in Illinois, we've had some great momentum here in the last, I would say, 10 days, and some good news coming for us in the recruiting world. And I think more of that is coming than going away. So a lot of the diligence, hard work that we've been working on is beginning to pay off, and a lot of that will come to light here shortly. And it's a fun time to be in the building.
Okay, thanks.
Bret, I wanted to know, for your graduate transfers that are going to arrive this summer after spring ball is over, do you get a good sense and a good confidence that they're not going to be that far behind and you can get them up to speed once fall camp starts?
You know, it's a great question, Matt. Like, so our coach can give a lot of credit to our assistant coaches. I walk by, you know, George McDonald's office. He's usually in here when I'm walking out here, one of the last ones right down the hallway on the right. And he can literally sit down and watch film with a prospect that maybe not be here, but he's got his Zoom set up. There's no rules or legislation against, you know, showing and seeing what we've done and what we have done, or maybe offensive stuff that Coach Peterson had done, you know, at you know, Appy State, you know, Coach Miller at Wyoming, showing guys things about what we're doing, you know, film from Wisconsin, you know, film from, you know, NC State, film from everywhere that we're kind of bringing this collective Illinois playbook together. So we can do some things, you know, and go over some things that give them a little bit. They can't be out there at practice. They can't be in our meetings. But I think one thing that we can really try to do is give them as much. And again, I go back to grad transfers. Grad transfers have two things going for them. A, they've graduated, right? So they're polished people, right? They've got an academic degree in their hands sooner than people think they would because they've taken care of business. And the other thing is they're usually coming from an environment that's been frustrating. So they're looking for a new outlook in life. And that's exactly what we can provide. So you got a very captive audience there. And my mission and my goal is to have those guys as best prepared when they get here in the summer as possible.
My follow-up, Bret, was a recruiting question, which is there's a lot of reports out there that June 1st is going to be the date where the dead period gets revoked. And, you know, kids can come on campus, you can go on the road. And I was curious if I assume you have a plan of what you guys want to do as a staff once June 1st hits. And I was curious if you could give some insight as to how that plan gets formulated. Is that Embleton sitting in a room with all the assistants saying, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here? Or is that them giving Pat feedback on here's where I want to go, map it out for me? How does those work?
Yeah, so any recruiting decisions will be a team decision. Pat's obviously in charge and kind of spearheads the whole conversation. He and I have a lot of individual conversations, but again, kind of referencing back to what I said at the beginning is the more minds you have together collectively working as one, the better chance you'll have for success. So we've always kind of done recruiting, especially since our arrival here in Champaign together. The one great thing we've been able to have is you have 10 coaches coming in from all over the country. I have a lot of different recruiting experiences and ties from Jay Kaiser with the NFL to Coach Ryan now, who just came from Metamora and very successful Illinois high school coach, to Pat and his ties here. Nate McNeil, who's been in the Chicago area, was with another school here in the state, but also came from Temple. You have strength coaches from all over the country. There's just a lot of collective thoughts coming together as one. I promise you, we have a plan for June 1. Sometimes plans are better kept secret. But I would tell you this, like if you follow us on social media, I'm sure you realize as well as others that we were literally, of all the teams in college football, over 120 teams to send out official visit invites for that first weekend, right? There's a lot of schools that followed us. Some of them actually used the exact same graphic we had. So we had the element there. We knew where we were going. We went out plenty in advance. And that first weekend in June will probably be one of our best weekends. As far as attacking the high school camp dates, one element that hasn't been solidified is what are going to be the rules as far as high school camps. There's some talk and discussion about one-day evaluations for underclassmen as well as upperclassmen. For us here at Illinois, we have obviously a good surrounding of talent, but we don't have near the numbers that some schools have, pure geographic numbers to get kids on campus. So we may want to limit the number of times we have them on campus and go off campus compared to a school that maybe has a large population around them that can draw them in easily. So we've discussed and talked about what's the advantages for Illinois, what are the disadvantages is, and just like it is on the field, we want to maximize our players' strengths, minimize our weaknesses. For us in recruiting, we want to maximize our strength, minimize our weaknesses. The X factor for us here on campus is just COVID. The COVID rules that we have to follow on campus through university as well as government policies. We're working through that stuff, and it's something that we constantly have to evolve.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about Blake Gerasati. I know he's just getting healthy now this spring season, and playing with his first Power 5 team. Essentially, how have you seen him grow and develop, and just as he kind of battles for a role here?
Gerasati's been like an intriguing guy since I've got here because it, wasn't film on him here in Illinois uniform. Had known about his transfer and what he was, why he actually had the surgeries, because he thought the season was canceled and then they have it reversed on him. So he's got a really unique story. Obviously, he embodies everything you want in college football, no matter how he came here. I'll go down the hallway here right out of my Zoom room, and a lot of times he's either sitting there in the hallway studying or working on his academics, or in the player recovery lounge, getting some type of physical recovery on his legs, lower body. So he just got all the right things. Practice has been very impressive for me, watching him. He's physical, he's smart, he's intelligent. He literally gets better every day. He buys into everything that Coach Miller has preached. Tank has talked about him from day one, his attack in the weight room. So really excited to see him play more and more snaps, and then see exactly where it goes in the fall.
I know he played as a center at Wofford. Is the plan still to keep him as a guard right now and have that transition be kind of set in stone there?
Marley, he'll probably see action in both on Monday night. He's a very versatile player. I think a lot of times people think big people can't play multiple positions, but it's exactly what he does. He can play left and right guard and center. So in theory, he can play 3 out of 5 positions, which is very, very, very good for us and for him. When he does have an opportunity to possibly move on after football here at Illinois, the NFL is always very, very appreciative of guys that can snap the ball and play guard and play multiple positions. So that'll be something that he only benefits from.
right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Hey, I got one. If I can get one, Coach.
You got it.
Hey, Coach, what can you just educate me on what's the difference in what a defensive scheme works in the NFL and what works in college? What's the differences between those levels?
Two different type of games. Who is that, John?
Yes.
Yeah, football's football, don't get me wrong, but they're especially in the NFL, you really don't have the extent of tempo that you do. You definitely have tempo and they play upbeat, but they just don't let you play at the level of snap frequency and the immediate turnaround of the football. So that really changes the game, right? So the NFL has got the game where it's in a certain time frame that they want to slot so that they know exactly when a game starts, and they're pretty darn good about when that game is going to end because everything is driven by TV revenue and time slots. So as easy as an answer to that is, that's truly probably one of the biggest differences. The other big difference is you really play the strengths of your best players, right? So go-to guys in the NFL, if you have a quarterback that plays at a different level in a certain system, that's what you cater to and build it around. In college football, you literally have the gamut, right? You have a team this week that's going to play a certain style. The next week maybe a triple option. The next week it's going to be a two-back, two tight end. The next week it's going back to a wide open spread. So college football is all over the place. I think college football defensively has to represent that. You have to literally be able in your scheme and your package to defend every type of football. And you only have 20 hours a week to get ready for it. In the NFL, we would literally have 20 hours in on the second or third day of our practice week. So in college football, you have 20 hours from game day Saturday to game day Saturday to get your players ready, right? So you're talking minimal time a day. You take a day off, you're dealing with 6. If you go to 4 hours a day, that's 24. You're already 4 hours over. So you really have a short amount of time to put in a game plan and work specifics. Whereas NFL, players would be in the building, say 6:37 in the morning, and someone wouldn't leave till 7 o'clock at night. So in 2 days, they may have 24 hours. Whereas in not have any rules to govern that. In college football, it's a totally different game. So I think the allotment of time and ability to adjust and adapt greatly affects your schemes.
With what your scheme that you're bringing here, is it something that fits directly with this roster, or is this something that you're really going to have to start recruiting to and to match what you want to do?
It's a great question, John. So I think what we try to do here collectively as coaches and really refrain from making a lot of decisions until we were about 6-7 weeks into this thing is find out what our players' strengths were, find out what we had and build around it. We had a basic understanding, Ryan's run a 3-4, he's run a 4-2, he's run a 4-3. I've had experiences in everything. All the coaches I hired, they weren't just coming out of one specific scheme. It's why I went with Ryan in the end. He was impressive and great knowledge, but he had a really broad base of different schemes in a short amount of time. So what we wanted to do is find out what our players are good at, try to set up a scheme that maximizes that and build around it. You're always going to recruit to a philosophy. That's not going to change, but we definitely have a brand of football that defensively is a work in progress. I think we've really zoned in on a few guys that do some things very, very well, but a big test for us will be Monday night. And then obviously the new additions that we have during the summer will get us ready for that opener against Nebraska.
Thanks for hanging with me, Coach.
Absolutely, no problem. You guys be safe.
Thanks, Bret.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.